There we go.
Good evening, everybody. My name is Charles Mudd, and you are here with me and Sean for Staying Safe Online. I'm an attorney. My principal of office is based out of Chicago, Illinois, and I've been dealing with a lot of internet-related issues for, I was just having a conversation with somebody about using my first Apple II 30-something years ago, so for quite a while, and I've had my own law firm for the last 15 years, and I'm here to talk today about staying safe online. I also have a program or a blog, MindDaddy, that talks about parental issues with gaming. And my colleague is Sean.
Hello, my name is Sean Stipe. My background comes from the server that I started for my nephew. I started it as a place that he could play Minecraft, and I wanted to introduce him to the game, but I didn't really want him exposed to a lot of the things you find out there on the internet, and I couldn't find something that offered what I was looking for, so I made it, and it has sort of evolved into a really amazing community of like-minded parents that want the same things for their kids and other people and other people's kids. My day job is a house parent at a residential school. I live with 12 middle school boys, so I'm also answering to their parents about the things those kids are doing online. It's a large issue to deal with, and that's where I'm coming from.
So, Sean and I, until MINECON 2016, or at least the planning, really, we did not know one another, but we have shared interests. And I think we've put together a pretty good program for all of you. And we're going to present it in a top 10 format. What does that mean? That means that we're going to try to give some easy takeaways, both for parents and kids. And I'm glad to see a mixture of the audience here. And that will help you try to remember those points that we have. As far as questions, certainly we both are amenable to answering questions. What we're going to try to do, given that there's top 10, well, obviously, that seems redundant, doesn't it? There's top 10 tips that we're going to give you. It doesn't leave a lot of time for each of them, so we're going to try to cruise through them. And if we can, certainly, if a question arises, we can try to answer it, but I think we'll have more time in the end if we flow through to Q&A at the end. So obviously, MINECON's staying safe online, and it took me a minute there to get to know the technology. So that drives home the point. Using PowerPoint, you'd think that I'd know how to use that on the screen and everything. But the first tip is know the technology. And what do I mean by that? Essentially, I think for parents, one of the key points to ensuring that our kids stay safe online, and I have two children myself, age 11 and 9, that are in the second row, one of which, I guess both of them are waving to you right now. One of the things that I think that's most important is knowing the technology. Now that kind of puts a burden on us as parents, but it's a fun burden, right? It's sitting down and playing Xbox if we have one, or using the PC, using a Mac, using a Chromebook. My oldest son is in junior high school, and they provide them with Chromebooks to do their homework. And so it's my obligation, I think, to know the technology, even though I'm a Mac-based person, know the technology of using a Chromebook. And that flows into also knowing the software that the kids are using, knowing, when my youngest son asks about Google Drive, knowing how that operates. And those are some straightforward software, hardware. But what we're talking about today in the terms of Minecraft and gaming, it's also going beyond just the general programs and hardware to learn about the programs, the games that they're engaged with. Pokemon Go. How many of you in the audience, parents and child alike, have played Pokemon Go? Well, that's going to come up in another segment as well. But as you all who have played it know, there's certain aspects about that game that really drive home the point that you need to be aware of your surroundings, and we'll get to that in a little bit later. So it's knowing the technology that the kids are using, both in your home, but also understanding what that technology is at school, knowing the software programs, and that way, when your children are using certain terminology that they're learning, you'll understand and kind of have an idea of what's going on. Likewise, it flows into a third area, and that's policies. The kids' policies, you know, BYOD, for many of you that work and your employers may have a BYOD policy, bring your own device. Some schools may have NBYOD or DBYOD, don't bring your own device to school, don't bring the phones, don't bring the iPads, and so forth. And it's very important for us as parents to understand those policies, to know what they can use, what they can't use, when they can use it, what software they can put on a Chromebook, and all of that will help them stay safe, but also it'll help them stay in line with the various places that they go, particularly schools. And as you come to understand the hardware and the software, then that's going to give you some additional capabilities that Sean's going to talk about just in a second. But before I turn over to Sean on parental controls, I'd like to mention the last part of this tip, knowing the technologies. Kids, this is your opportunity to teach your parents something they don't know. It's your opportunity to be the one that knows more than your parents. And as technology immersed as I think I am, my kids have already surpassed my knowledge in terms of what they're able to do. Certainly the speed at which they're able to do things and program. But again, turning to Sean now, talking about knowing parental controls.
Parental controls tends to be something that parents love if they know about, but kids don't for obvious reasons because they tend to block out complete parts of the game. There's a huge range of controls that are available out there. A lot of games just have nothing in the way of parental controls, like Minecraft. It's difficult for them to add parental controls because someone else could just write a mod to remove them. But there are examples out there, and I have some to show you from the most basic and rudimentary, one of which you see all the time is just to turn off like blood and gore in a game. Well, strangely, these tend to be right in the options, so if your kid doesn't want to have that turned on, they can go right in there and turn it off. There's nothing to stop them from doing that, but it was a start. This is one of the first things we ever really saw with parental controls. But there's also my favorite example, and the best example is from World of Warcraft. World of Warcraft has this amazing online password-protected parental control system where you can set play limits. You can set that your kid can only play for 2-4 hours a day. You can turn off the voice chat functionality that's built into the game. You can set play schedules that they can only play from 4 p.m. to 6 p.m. You can also get mailed to you at the end of every week how much time they played, how much time they used on this game, and what they were doing. You can turn off in-game purchases. They also have you can turn off their instant messaging system. This all came to be when they introduced this Real ID system, which transcended all of the Blizzard games and all of the games on Battle.net, that it used your real name to communicate with people and identified you by that name through all of their games. And there was a huge outcry that this isn't really safe. I don't want my kid's name out there. And they developed this entire system so that you could go in there if you don't like it and turn that off. This I think is what every game should aspire to have. Some systems similar to this or like it. There's also other things you can do if there aren't controls in the game. For instance, a lot of home routers, you can set the same kind of playtime limits in there. You can go in your router and turn off the internet after 9 p.m. You can set things only certain times a day. You can also go online and find all kinds of different programs that do the same thing. You can allow or disallow even programs or games from accessing the internet in many different ways. Microsoft has one built into Windows that does something similar. You can allow certain games to be run or disallow certain games to be run right from Windows. I am a Windows person, so I'm not sure if something like that exists for the Mac, but I know it does for Windows. There's also, I've found that developers of games are very receptive if you say you want something and they hear from people that they want it, they'll build it into the game. As I saw happen with the outcry with Real ID being introduced many years ago to World of Warcraft. Unfortunately, the developers mostly just hear from the kids and what the kids want. And the kids are out there saying, we want more, ores, we want more of this, we want more of that. Parents aren't tending to be as involved if they're not playing the games. But if this is something you want for a particular game, if you don't like a feature of the game and you would like to have that turned off, go and email the developers. Say, we would really like to have this. This would make this game so much, we'd like to have this control over it. Excuse me. Using these systems to your advantage just gives you a great deal of power over what your kids can and cannot do online. Excuse me. This is going to lead into, as I talked about, being able to shut off buying and purchasing things online. But I'm going to go back to Charles, and he's going to talk about monitoring the purchases that your kids can make through games and online.
Thanks, Sean. Yes, indeed. And some of the examples that I might utilize during this presentation are real-life examples, some of which happened to me or our family. But I think that monitoring purchases is a significant aspect of keeping our kids safe online and for them to learn responsibility. There are two aspects that I think are key to monitoring purchases. One, the pocketbook, which I'll get to in a moment, and two, the content, so that you know the games that they're purchasing, whether it be on an iPhone or even extending to iTunes, whether they're downloading a particular movie or content. And we all have passwords, but you might want to change those every so often, because my oldest son, Tanner, not too long ago, asked me for the password to buy something on iTunes, and before I could even respond, he said, "Oh no, never mind, I remember what your password is." And then he hung up the phone and went on. So that's a clue in that we might want to change our passwords. But I love, just as an example for monitoring purchases, it's iTunes, and particularly with the kids that have smart devices, smartphone or iPhones. It's the ability to have a family account, and then you have child accounts within that family account. And child accounts are essentially accounts created for individuals that are less than 13 years old. There's a federal statute, the Child Online Privacy Protection Act, which I'm not going to get into right now, but that precludes any companies from obtaining or acquiring information about children under 13 without parental consent. So a lot of times when you go onto websites and they ask, are you 13 years or older, that's their effort to make sure that the person answering the question is actually 13 years or older. But in iTunes, you're able to create family accounts, you're able to create child accounts under those, and then you're also able to turn on a feature that allows you to approve the purchases that a child wants to make. And so they can't actually go through and make that purchase, or the purchase can't be completed without you receiving notice of it and going ahead and accepting that. That also allows you to look at in-app purchases, and that's one of the examples that I have. I was talking to somebody not too long ago in preparation for this, and mention this particular situation where we had a game, for better or for worse, my wife and I introduced the boys to The Simpsons. And they started watching The Simpsons and being very enthralled with that television show. And we were kind of monitoring or selecting the different episodes. Well, there's a game out there that's related to The Simpsons, and all of a sudden I had $200 worth of virtual donuts that had been bought on my account. Fortunately, I was able to call Apple and explain what I think happened, and after talking to my son, you provide the password and then there's a delay, so you don't have to put the password in again right away. And I believe that he didn't realize whether or not the purchase had gone through and was sitting there tapping the purchase button, and it just racked up $200 worth of virtual donuts for Homer. So that's one of the things to watch, and make sure that you do pay attention to those bills. And then a lot of the software, all of these tips flow into one another. Knowing the software, knowing the technology, looking at the parental controls, but even beyond that, looking at the delay and how long you have to enter a password, or how long can go before you have to enter a password again. And another way that you can do this is kind of to set up home environments or structure home environments as to who can access certain things. And that's a great opportunity to shift back to Sean, who has a lot of experience in that.
To this, I'm going to speak mostly about Minecraft. The internet is full of Minecraft servers. If you go on any server lift site, there are tens of thousands of servers out there from all ranges of things to be exposed to. There are adults-only servers, which, if I was a kid and I saw adults only, that would pique my curiosity. I would, what's going on there? I'm going to go, sure, I'm 18, and check that out. So to be involved in finding those servers and finding something you approve of is really going to help out and really keep, if you're concerned about what your children are being exposed to, being involved in selecting those servers is to your advantage. You can also check out their websites. When you select a server, go to their website, check out their websites, check out if they have forums, see what people are talking about, kind of get a feel for the culture of what's going on that website. Are there rules? Are those rules being adhered to? Are they being moderated? What's going on that server? The third step in selecting something would just be to go explore it. Log on that server with your kid. Have them walk around. Kids show your parents around. Explore it together. And what I would recommend to parents while this is going on is to watch the chat scroll by. What is going on this server? What are the kids talking about? What kind of builds are there? Are they kid-friendly stuff? There's a lot you can tell in the first 5 minutes of exploring a server about what is actually going on there. This guess leads into exploring, knowing your surroundings, and I'm going to lead back into Charles.
And it flows really nicely into that. Knowing your environments. What I'm talking about, shifting from knowing the environment of a game server and exploring that, I'm going to take ourselves out of the computer again and return to the Pokemon Go example. Knowing, and I'm actually going to flow back, as I said, all of these tips kind of flow together. And knowing the technology, monitoring purchases, knowing the online environments, choosing an online safe environment, knowing your surroundings kind of flows into the first one, knowing the technology. I have 3 acronyms up on the screen, and does anybody know what all 3 of them mean? Does anybody know what one of them means? All right, so the first one is AR for augmented reality. That is your Pokemon Go. Augmented reality is basically taking a device and seeing through to the real world, but having something virtual overlaid. Virtual reality, VR, is where and they have examples downstairs where you have the Oculus or other virtual reality devices where you completely enclose your head, or your eyes rather, and place yourself in the virtual world. And there are new items coming out. The Omni, which was a Kickstarter, is essentially your treadmill where you're able to run in place and turn around. And eventually we will be somewhat completely immersed in this. But the reason that this is a tip is knowing your surroundings is as we move into the technology of augmented reality, virtual reality, and the third one is mixed reality, where there's kind of a combination of the two, knowing your surroundings takes on new meaning. Augmented reality definitely means knowing the surrounding on where you happen to be. When you're using the Pokemon Go, let me take a step back. I have a client that's coming out with an augmented reality product that's going to be really fantastic. You're going to be able to use it in shopping centers, grocery stores. This is more for the parents. And just anywhere where you happen to be shopping. The kids and the parents are using Pokemon Go, and we hear stories already of people playing Pokemon Go and not knowing where they happen to be. So you can imagine, even though this is in Minecraft right now, somebody playing Pokemon Go, looking at their phone, and not necessarily knowing what's in front of them. And then, too late, they realize that something quite dangerous is below. And I jest to a certain extent, but there is a story already of two college-age individuals, I believe, that walked off a cliff playing Pokemon Go. Now, I believe both of them are alive today, but there are other stories where somebody will be playing Pokemon Go and driving, or not paying attention walking the sidewalk. And this is where parents, we need to be sure that our kids learn from us. So what does that mean? That means that we don't text and drive, right? That we don't use the technology that we're accustomed to in situations that we should be paying attention to the surroundings. Virtual reality also has an implication in, let's say, your living room or your basement. We have an Oculus Rift in the basement, and you really need a buddy to be with you, because when you put the device over your eyes, you are no longer aware of your real world physical surroundings, and you can get lost in that. And if somebody's not watching, or if you were on a platform, you very well could step off the stage and find yourself hurting. So both in the Pokemon Go world of augmented reality, the virtual world, which is only going to increase and grow, these technologies, it's important to know the technology, know the terminology, and reinforce to our kids and ourselves to be aware of the surroundings. And before I turn it back over to Sean about game mods and other things related to features, have a buddy when you're playing these AR and VR games. That is the key way to make sure that you remain aware of your surroundings, and when you're not able to, somebody can help you do so.
Mods are something that is near and dear to Minecraft. It's one of the things that has just taken off. It's made Minecraft what it is. Mods also can introduce anything to games. They can change the behavior of the game itself, turn it into something completely different than what it was intended to be originally, just like Minecraft has done. There's servers out there that have all kinds of mods that you may not want your kids being exposed to. There's servers that deal with dealing and selling drugs. I wouldn't want my kids dealing with that. There's Skyrim has a mod where all of the NPCs become completely naked and are walking around with no clothes. The kids can go out and just download, install that mod. It's something you really want to be involved with. If they're just in their room being explorative and downloading and trying these new things, there's a whole world out there of people that you're making whatever their minds can come up with. It's something you really should be involved with, be concerned about, and work with your kids. If they're interested in modding their games, just be involved in that process. Check them out. Also, when you get into mods, there's a lot of sites out there that are just preying on kids. They're trying to catch kids looking for these things and install viruses and do all kinds of stuff. This is just one website I found that obviously they're not up to any good. None of those links are going to take you to anything effective. They're just going to put a bunch of garbage on your computer. They might just be trying to fish for data to use against you, or put one of those ransomware viruses or something on your computer. It's just something you don't want your kids going out and doing if they're not equipped to know what they're getting themselves into. There's plenty of ways to effectively find these. If you know how to Google, you know how to find these things. Some of the first links I found, I had to actually dig for this, but these show up when you can see the search result that turned this up. It's not like Minecraft mods. I'm looking for something specific, something that isn't going to be your first normal search result. So just be there, look for those mods, be careful when you're doing it. It's pretty easy if you're familiar with the internet, it's pretty easy to tell if this is a legit website or not. Along with modding, we're going to go right into the next tip of exploring online options. There's many different types of games out there, and some of them you need to be more careful about than others. The MMO type games like World of Warcraft, these are servers that you connect your game to. It's run by the company that made the game. They tend to be pretty heavily moderated. They have systems in place that if somebody is acting inappropriately, other players can report them and they'll get punishment in one way or another. Ultimately, it could get banned. These you don't tend to have to worry about too much. There's game room type servers. These are in like team combat games, Call of Duty type games, where you connect and join into a waiting room type thing to meet up with other players or sign up to go play a game. And when you get into that game, you'd be with your team and another team, and that really depends on what's going on. It really depends on what players you end up with. There's a lot of trash talk going on in those kinds of games. At least with the boys I work with, I see those behaviors come out. They pull it from the games. They pull those words and put downs from other people and talking about their mom and all this stuff. And it's just something you want to just be aware of. Be aware what kind of online access these games have. And then there's the Minecraft type model where anyone can go out and make a server to connect to. Anyone can go out and make a Minecraft server and put whatever they want to on it. They can set whatever rules they want. They can allow whatever they want. And these you really need to be involved with in selecting. Just like I talked about earlier, that you want to find something that you approve of. You want to find something that your kids are going to find fun, but that you also feel comfortable with. Well, this then, I guess, leads right into the next tip. Before I go over to Charles, the private online games, you got to be aware of the culture going on there as well, because the kids, younger kids especially, can get really, really upset by some of the behaviors that go on. Like Minecraft, you build a house and someone comes along and just destroys it or blows you up or kills you. And I've seen my kids especially, that's really stressful to them and really upsetting. So leading into Charles, he's going to talk about being a model citizen.
So I want to take a step back, and I want to ask the kids in the audience, how many of you believe that Minecraft is one of the best games that you've ever played? And I think that shows it right there, and it turns into one of the things that I want to say is I think that Minecraft players of all ages are the best game players. Not necessarily, I'm not talking technical skill, but as far as manners, as far as working together, as far as being good together. There are exceptions with knocking down the building that you've just built, but overall, from my experience, Minecraft players are some of the best and nicest players out there. And we can see that parents, I think, in just the conversations that we've had with people here at MINECON and talking to other parents and talking about the friendly nature of just the environment. And that kind of leads into my discussion about model online citizens. And what is a model online citizen? Well, you know, in the gaming world, there's kind of a dark area. One of the dark aspects is it's called Gamergate. And essentially, this is not the way it should be, but there is a group of rogue, perhaps male game players out there that believe that they can taunt and say things to female game players that are completely inappropriate. And that stems from any number of things, but in Minecraft, I think that we see less of that than in some of your other games. And I think that we see less of that in a certain age group than when we get into high school and older students. But this is an opportunity where the parents can instruct their children on what is good behavior in an online community and what is not good behavior. And it goes to topics that all of our schools have discussed and that we've probably all had discussions at parent-teacher conferences, you know, the broad parent-teacher conferences or the orientation, and that's cyberbullying and when to recognize it, when to understand it, and when to report it. And it's one thing for us as parents and adults. We need to be aware of that. We need to know the technology. We need to monitor the purchases, go into the living room. You know, just as an aside, one aspect of that is, I don't know how many of you parents have had this happen to you. Let me describe this phenomenon where you happen to have a child talking on the phone or talking on a game in the living room or whatever room it happens to be, and you happen to walk in and suddenly it goes quiet. Like the conversation just suddenly, abruptly stopped. And I think that that's an opportunity, not that they were talking about anything that we might be opposed to or find objectionable, but it's a clue to kind of ask what they were talking about, what the conversations were about. Because one of the fears that I had when my kids started to interact online with others was, you know, the language is one thing, but they probably hear the language elsewhere, the foul language. But what I was most concerned about is the harassment. Would my children playing the game be harassed by some 17-year-old guy or whomever and telling them that they weren't doing good enough or that they shouldn't be playing the game? And I don't think that that happened, but the reason that I was concerned about that is that is bullying and something that my kids enjoy so much in playing games. I did not want anybody to do anything to deter that excitement. So I think that we need to pay attention to those conversations, not only to protect ourselves, but then also, or protect our kids, but also to make sure that we catch the things that they may be doing to others. So that while I was concerned about some people doing that to my kids, I need to make sure that they don't do that to others. And I think that by watching that and growing with our children and showing them what exemplary behavior happens to be by treating people nice. And when others online, in those communities, when others online say something bad about a young girl, a young boy, whatever it happens to be, that they stand up, and virtually of course, but they stand up and say, you know, that's really not cool. That's not accepted here. And I think that the more kids do that, the more that we encourage the kids to do that, the better those environments are going to be. And I can think of no other group that's more appropriate to go out into the world and teach other kids those principles than Minecraft players. Because I just think that they're the best for any number of reasons. So that's when I talk about model online citizens, that's what I'm trying to get at, is that it's our duty as adults to know about the online environments, and then as we teach them things that we want them to know growing up into the world about being good citizens, that we also extend that to these online environments. Cyberbullying is a really dangerous and bad thing. We all need to take it seriously, and the kids are the ones that are able to stop that as well and say we don't take that. Now that moves into staying legal, and it's kind of an area that I could talk on for, I think Sean and I could talk about all of these tips for hours and hours, examples, and so on, and we don't have that today. But I will try to give you some tips on staying legal or having your kids stay legal. And one of those is to start with copyright. This applies to children and adults and anything online. In most cases, if it's too good to be true, it is. And that means that if you're downloading music, for example, and you haven't paid for it, it's probably too good to be true. Now, if you actually go to the band's website or the artist's website and they are saying, download my song, I want you to try it, as many do, then that's one thing. If you're going to the actual source who controls that content and they're saying download it for free, that's great. But if you go to some site that looks like iTunes that's saying download all this music for free, it's too good to be true. I can't tell you how many individuals that I've represented over the last 13 years since the recording industry started suing people for downloading songs, and then the Motion Picture Association jumped on board for downloading the films. And then some other profit-oriented companies and attorneys saw that, wow, they just send a demand letter out and they get a $3,000 settlement for downloading one movie. That's a business model. And so then a bunch of people started acquiring these copyrights and entrapping people to downloading content. And then once they tracked who those people were through IP addresses, they'd send out notices to the internet service providers. And families, parents, retirees, high school students, college students, foreign immigrants that, I had one client that was from Russia that downloaded a dubbed version of a film because they didn't understand English, and they thought that it was okay, and it was not. And every demographic you can possibly imagine over the last 13 years I've represented, and having received the notice from their internet service providers saying that a plaintiff has found out that they've downloaded a film or song or something from their home illegally, and then they send out, and the settlement demands on average are between anywhere from $1,500 to $3,500. Although there is a plaintiff out there that their initial demands are in the 5 figures. So if it's too good to be true, it usually is. And that ties back to what Sean said about the mods. Not so much on illegally downloading them, but on those URLs. If you search and you go to Google and you type something in and you see URLs, which is basically your web page title, the website, the domain is mud.com, and the URL is the mud.com/everything else. But if you see URLs like he had on his slide, that's a bogus website. It should be a clean URL. It should be easily identifiable. But those mods, if they're right up there and they seem to be the great website to get exactly what you're looking for, it's probably too good to be true in some instances, and you're going to get viruses and so forth on the computers. And then my wife says my Internet Explorer or my web browser shut down, and it's because maybe one of the kids got on there and was downloading a mod. Copyright, if it's too good to be true, it is. So just, again, monitor the purchases, monitor what your kids are doing. It's a lot safer to explain to them what an iTunes account, or the streaming services are great now. I mean, you pay for a streaming service for music. You may not be able to put it all on your phone, but you don't have to worry about downloading a bunch of files that are illegal. The next is free speech. Another aspect of my experience is so many people, kids, predominantly adults though, think that free speech means you can say whatever you want to say on the internet. Countless examples of that. And you can't. Just as, and the clearest example to demonstrate to people you can't say whatever you want, whether it's on the internet or anywhere else, is yelling fire in a crowded theater. It's illegal to do that. You can't say that. Why is that? Well, there's a balance between public safety and our free speech. So free speech is not an absolute. Defamation is a long-standing principle. If you say something false about somebody online, particularly if it falls into certain categories, it's illegal. I mean, it's unlawful, and you can get sued for it. So we all need to think about things before we write. And that ties into when our kids are on these online communities or chatting or saying things, you know, free speech does not mean that you can say anything that you want. It can get back to you. It can get back to the schools. It can get back to the parents. And another misnomer on that is that there's anonymity on the internet. Unless somebody is very, very technologically savvy, there is no anonymity on the internet. I can't tell you how, I have hundreds of examples of individuals that have said things or done things online, created fake accounts, think that they've done it in a great way to be anonymous so that nobody's ever going to track them. I can track you. And in just a few weeks, I'm going to talk on a panel about cybersecurity, and there are people that are better than I am, but through the legal system, we can find out IP addresses. We can track down certain things. So we need to think before we write. And as parents, tying it back to staying safe online, it's teaching our kids, and it ties back to being a model, online citizen. Think before you write. You can't say anything that you want. It does have repercussions. And we just need to be nice to one another. I know that sounds cliche, but that really is what it all comes down to. We all want to have fun, right? I mean, Lydia Winter's title, now it's brand related, but it was Director of Fun. And I think that that's one of the best titles for a position. That's the position that I want, Director of Fun. All of these tips, and we're going to kind of flow into the final one with Sean here in just a moment, but all of these tips in my mind, and I think why we put this together, is so that we can have fun and we stay out of trouble and we just have the best time that we can. The final thing that I would mention on staying legal is TOU, which means terms of use or terms of service. All of your websites have them, and the adults in the room, how many of you actually read? Every time you go to a website and it says the terms of service have changed, please read through this and click I agree if you agree. How many actually read the whole thing? You read the whole thing. Well, at least there's one. I won't even raise my hand because I don't read the whole thing. But a lot of times that's important. And tying it to gaming and Minecraft, I've had clients, high school students, that have run Minecraft servers, and not necessarily them, but other people have run Minecraft servers and they charge money for certain things. And if you look at the terms of use, particularly now that Microsoft has taken over, although it was kind of there with Mojang, and it's not, it's legitimate terms of use, is they did not want people out there monetizing Minecraft gameplay. And there are a lot of people that made a lot of money doing that. And that's fine if it's okay, but if you read some of the terms of use, sometimes those terms of use will have restrictions on what you're able to do and not able to do. And in particular instance with Minecraft servers, Microsoft has come through and changed the terms of use again to really put a quash on a lot of the servers that are out there trying to monetize, paying for upgrades, paying for bonus packs and things like that. where people were making a lot of money off of it. And you don't want to get in trouble on the other end. You don't want to get a letter that you violated the terms of service for a particular website. So when we're using software, when we're letting our kids play software, it may be worth the while to take a look at terms of service. And I will grant you this. I'll grant you one thing, that I try to, and I'm going to make even a better effort than when I write terms of service for my clients, that we write them in a way that everybody can understand and make them short. Because so many of them are legalese, and it's just, in my mind, ridiculous for lawyers to be writing in legalese. It's like they're trying to prove something to somebody. It should be very short, very straightforward, in kind of this format, hopefully, where we've talked. Sean's going to go to privacy in just a second, but what you really should go away with are the top 10 tips, those overarching guidelines. And with now an area that is really important to me, it's talking about keeping identifiable information private, and Sean's going to conclude that out.
I saw a quote in a panel earlier today. It said, "Our kids are growing up in a digital playground and nobody is on recess duty." And that really struck me. There is a lot going on out there. Kids are sharing a lot of stuff. And in moderating the server that I help run, I see kids share things that they don't really understand gives a whole lot away. Like, I'm going to Pinchot State Park on Thursday. Well, okay, now I know exactly where you're going to be and exactly what time. Things like the name of the school I go to. You might not have given me your name or what city you live in, but I know where you go to school now. Or the name of a park nearby, or the name of a street that you play on. Just have these conversations with your kids about what they should and shouldn't be sharing online. A lot of times they don't know that what they're sharing gives a whole lot away. And it's something that really need to be careful about. Have those discussions with them. Find out what is okay. What are you comfortable with them sharing? Are you comfortable with them sharing their first name? Or as they get older, are you comfortable with them posting videos of themselves on YouTube? Have those conversations. It's really important for you to know what your kids are sharing online. And kids should be having these conversations with their parents too, just to stay safe, to stay out of trouble. I mean, we've all heard stories of kids being stalked or even abducted through games and things that they've shared online. There are predators out there. There's not many, but there are. And the fact that there are is cause for you to be concerned about this. I like that this is the last tip, that it just ties everything all together. Another part of it, though, is keeping online friends online. I know a number of other panels today have talked about this. I've heard it a couple times, that if your kids are meeting friends online, that might not be who they think it is. And if they're arranging to go meet them somewhere, be cautious. I've seen, just walking around today, I've seen tons of groups of people getting together. I mean, I've done it myself with some people that I've never met before that came from my server, that I met them for the first time today. And in a nice, huge public place with parents involved, that can be okay. But if they're going to go meet them at the park down the street, that should raise a lot of red flags and something you should really, really be careful about. So keep what you're sharing online private. Just really think about what you're comfortable with sharing and what you want your kids sharing, and have those conversations. It really is your first line of defense to make sure that they know what they're doing out there. At this point, that's all we have to share. I believe we can open the microphones for any questions.
If you could go up to the microphone, there are two there.
Hi, I'm a Minecraft dad. I have kids that play. They love mods because mods are awesome, right? You guys touched a little bit on the links and clicking, and everybody that's new to computers, which includes kids and obviously my parents and everything like that. Happy clicking. Can you guys just go over maybe a little bit more of like kind of what's a good link, what's a bad link, since 40% of the people still in the room are still kids?
Well, Charles mentioned this earlier, just looking at the link itself is a huge giveaway. If you're looking for a specific Minecraft mod and the URL you see is minecraft-mod-forge.downloadmenow.com or something, that should raise some red flags. That should be something you're kind of hesitant about. A lot of the really good links will be, I'm just making this up, but like minecraftmods.com. It's probably a legit website. Look at it. Is there ads all over the place? That could be a red flag. Just look at the links itself. Some of the ones I showed on the slide earlier, you'll have like XYZ whatever, and what those are, those websites get shut down really quick. And they have automated scripts out there to automatically make a new URL and put that thing right back up in another place and list it right back on all the search engines and make it available. They're spam, and it's computer generated. It's all done automatically. They don't even need to manually do that. They're just searching for clicks. They're just searching for people to come download it. So just the link itself, it should be a huge trigger for that. Do you have anything else?
Yeah, if I could add something to that, and this kind of flows into paying attention when we get emails that say, you know, supposedly Chase sends an email and says, there's something wrong with your account, and you open the email and it wants you to click somewhere. And it might have in the email, it might say, you might read chase.com, but if you hover your mouse over the link, it should highlight what the actual real link happens to be. And if it's not chase.com, if it's not very straightforward, it's a phishing attempt, it's a virus, you know, these are hackers or what have you out there, black hat hackers, bad hackers that are trying to do something. And just on the domain side, for, as you said, those that may not understand the technology, so when we talk about a uniform resource locator, or a link rather, which is what, you know, when you go to a website and it has at the top the long address, the website address or the web address, that's made up of a number of different components. And one way to tell the legitimate domain is if it has a .com, you know, that's still the blue standard for domain names. I mean, there are any number of, those are top-level domains. There are any number of them, hundreds now. .ru is for Russia, and no offense to anybody that happens to be Russian, but that's a lot of source for some bogus websites, as somebody will get .ru. But .com, and then to the left of that is the actual real domain. So if you go to mudlaw.com, mudlaw.com is the domain. Owning that domain name, I can put anything I want to, I guess it's your left, anything I want to your left. And that's when Sean was talking about minecraft.forge.download.mod.bogus.com. They're trying to put those words in that domain name, in that URL, that the search engines will pick up on. And it's hard. I mean, even for me, going to some of those mod sites, and I've tried to teach, you know, I still try to teach my kids that you've got to go through and look for the actual link that is the real link to the mod. Those websites, even the legitimate sites that have mods on them, they're monetizing that. They're having that content so that they can sell advertisements, and then they get money for the ads that are on the website. So they may actually have on that web page a link to the real mod. You just have to find it in the midst of all the advertising. And the advertising does not necessarily mean it's a bogus website. They just happen to be wanting to make money off of that. All right? Do you have a question?
Well, I could actually stand up there and join you guys for hours going over different parts of the community and how to tear down from the legal side to the community side, but we'll leave that for a different day. Let's actually start on this. I've actually run a community at one point. We've had concurrent users of up to 200 players, and we've had admins from all over the world, up to 18 working simultaneously trying to keep a lid on things. But obviously we can't all be present all the time online. One of the problems that we have occasionally is, even though we do have good chat filters and everything that we can do in our power to make it so that players can come online even if they're very young, and join the older kids and play in a way where even if they aren't, necessarily having the most fun time, they're at least protected. But some of the problems we run into is that when some people take advantage of the system and find ways to actually get at and grief our younger players, I'm not saying that we've had this issue to a grave extent, but it happens on all communities. Is there anything you can bring up for the parents to make children, I guess, get a grasp upon the issue that not everyone is going to be the most fair, and that coming and running down the people who run the server's doorstep is necessarily the most correct way to handle things?
Well, that's a loaded question, and Sean, you may have your perspective for running a server, but I think, to be fair, I would be on the side of encouraging kids that if they see a problem or that they have a problem, that they are encouraged to report that. Now, it may be that you running the server can tell them that, somebody calling you a jerk, we can't run down all of that. We all say things that, kids say things that they may not mean, both to their parents and to their friends. And every time that happens, there's not a sanction that would necessarily be enforced in the community. And I think that one way to explain that up front, to kind of get to what you're saying, is have a policy for the kids so that it's in their terms, that they understand that you may get mad at one another, and just somebody calling you a name may not be something that needs to be reported. But I wouldn't want to deter them from actually reporting, because I think that oftentimes that happens too much, and that they're deterred and that they don't bring something to the attention. And it may be that the same individual that said something to them has been saying it to many others. And I think that's for even the adult, our communities, like Second Life. It's been happening for a long time, and there is a balance, because as you said, you can't address everything, but I would encourage them to at least talk to their parents or, report it, and then you can filter through that. Do you have a comment?
Well, first, I want to thank you for doing what you do. The space that we tend to is, it's very needed that we have servers that have moderation like that out there. I wish there were more, so thank you first for that. I was former military, so I'm a rule follower, and the way we try to solve that problem is with our rules. We gave all the players tools to protect their stuff, and our stance is that if you don't protect it, I'm sorry, I can't help you, but here, we'll show you how to protect it so that it doesn't happen to you again. And that's all we do. If you don't protect your stuff, I'm sorry, there's not much we can do. If it was egregious enough, we would go after the player, but typically, if you're not taking the effort to protect that, then I'm sorry, that's your loss.
If I could add one thing that I wanted to mention, Minecraft Realms, talking about creating servers, and if you want to create a safe online environment, Minecraft Realms is a fantastic opportunity, because it is a monthly subscription, but then the parents can control the universe of who is allowed in. And so you can have your children invite only their friends, and you can monitor who has access, the passwords, the invites have to go out. And we did that for a Cub Scout pack. And it ties back to this conversation, because one of the things, talking about creating model online citizens, is one of the things that we did with the Cub Scouts is outside the virtual world, we had them sit down and come up with their own kind of rules. And one of the rules was don't knock down what somebody else has built. But those are also opportunities for the kids to themselves to participate what they want in the environment and what they don't want in. Before I return to you, because I know you have a question, but some people are leaving, I am happy to field questions after this, or whenever you may have them. And you can find me at mindadia.com, or mudlaw.com. But feel free to mention that you were at MINECON, and I'd be happy to answer any questions. Yes, sir.
I actually didn't have a question. I just wanted to thank you for responding.
Oh, well, thank you. I share Sean. Thank you for doing what you're doing. Yes, sir.
Sure, I just had a couple comments on things that you can do. One of the things that I find hard is trying to figure out those URLs for ourselves. Sometimes in kids it's even harder. So we use a program called Web of Trust, which is an add-in to your browser, which basically is reputation-based. So on Minecraft mods, a good site's going to come up green, and something that's like xyqrz dot zy4 is going to say is going to be red or not allow them to go there.
Right.
So that's one thing that we use just from and any of those reputation kind of open DNS or from a DNS perspective, so you don't get to bad places. And the other thing is I was going to say is from a parent's perspective, if your kids are using your main computer for gaming, I wouldn't have them. I'd make sure they don't have administrative access, and I'd make sure that I have a very solid backup.
Right.
Because a lot of these things that you can click on will crypto lock, and you have a choice of you pay $1,000 to get your content back, or you bring them from a backup. So I've seen that multiple people. I work in the IT group, and people come to me and say, I got crypto locked. My kid clicked on a link. So if it's your primary computer as a parent, if you don't have some type of backup that is keeping a copy of old data,
Right.
you could lose everything on your computer.
That's a lesson to be learned for all of us, and I think that kind of concludes this panel, is to always have a backup, whether you're having your kids use the material or your computer or not, because I know that I've needed a backup countless of times when I haven't had it. And in fact, I saw this morning that I'm overdue for my backup. So I want to thank all of you for coming. I really appreciate it, as I know Sean does.
Yes,
And-
thank you all for your time. Enjoy the closing ceremonies.
Yes, thank you. And if you can, fill out the, if you have the app, go to the program and rate us, and hopefully you'll rate us positively. Thanks a lot.